It'll probably surprise nobody to learn that I was a bit of a nerd in middle school. I had never really paid attention to politics until 1992, though. But in that election year, something really clicked with me and I was fascinated. In my eighth grade social studies class, my teacher, Mrs. Wheeler, had our classes learn about the election by allowing us to learn about the candidates, and we got to pose as them in mock debates. Now, this was Raleigh, North Carolina in 1992. So out of 93 eighth graders, only myself and Katina White dared to support Bill Clinton. The rest of the class split evenly amongst President Bush and Ross Perot. Suffice it to say, despite Katina and I giving it our all in our debates, the Clinton-Gore ticket lost miserably when our entire eighth grade class voted. But I had a new interest, and I loved this fascinating thing called politics. That same year, when our language arts teacher assigned us all a project in which we were to interview and write a story about someone who we admired, almost every other student chose their church youth director, their dance teacher, their scout leader, or one of their parents. Little old eighth grade me called up the office of our U.S. Senator and former North Carolina Governor Terry Sanford and asked him if I could interview him for my paper. And he actually invited me to his office in Raleigh and let me talk to him for a whole hour. Now, Terry Sanford has always been a political hero of mine, and the fact that I actually got to meet him as an eighth grader before he died is probably one of my most cherished moments. And actually, that might have been the only A I made in all of middle school. I was not a great student. I had far too many other things distracting me. It wasn't that I couldn't do the work. It was mostly that I wouldn't do the work. And it affected my grades, not just in eighth grade, but all the way through high school. But fortunately for me, that same eighth grade year, that same social studies teacher offered me an opportunity to earn some extra credit to make up for my missed assignments by initiating some sort of project on my own. So, always a producer, I went big. I called the campaign office for the man running for re-election as U.S. Congressman in our district, and somehow the eighth grader talked his campaign manager into having him come and speak to my eighth grade class. And he did. He won his re-election to that seat in 1992, and I'm going to continue to tell myself that his speech to my eighth grade class had a lot to do with that. But I know it didn't. Congressman David Price has been representing me in my hometown in the United States Congress for almost my entire lifetime. Of the 435 current members in the U.S. House of Representatives, only 6 were elected to office before him. He's not only an institution in the U.S. House, he's been a constant symbol in my own life of a dedicated public servant and an example that I personally wish more lawmakers would follow. It is a very special week here at Politicon. This week's episode marks the end of our very first full year of podcast episodes, our 52nd. Hard to believe. So this week, Politicon is, and so am I, thrilled to celebrate by welcoming one of my personal favorites, Congressman David Price. I'll ask him to tell us about the changes he's seen since he joined the U.S. House in the 1980s. What are some of the ways that Congress works better now than it did when it started? What are some of the ways that it's dropped the ball? And what does it take to represent Americans well in Congress? And how the heck are we going to get along?
How are you doing? I haven't seen or heard from you in a long time.
It's been a minute. Well, with what I do, nobody leaves their house anymore. I haven't been anywhere in a while.
I'm more that way than you might think, although I am in D.C. right now. I did drive up this afternoon.
Do you, but I mean, you've been there, obviously,
every
time we needed it.
We had to get sworn in person, but we can vote by proxy, and so I did some of that this fall.
Okay, well, I've seen you. I watch C-SPAN more than I probably should admit to anyone. So I've seen you a few times. Actually, I think voted proxy for other people. I think at least one of the votes I saw.
Right.
So, but you don't. There's not much you can do in the district, though, right now. Is there to get out? So much is closed. Yeah.
No, except the district. The different groups have caught on to Zoom meetings, so
right.
we have them back to back, it seems like. So it's a busy time.
This episode is the first, our anniversary episode for this Politicon podcast. We started a year ago, and when we were deciding who we wanted to have on for, sort of a momentous episode, I said, listen, who I really want to talk to is Congressman Price. And I told the producers about, I've told the producers about me calling you, and you came to my 8th grade class at Leesville Middle back in 1992 and spoke, and all of those stories I've talked to him about. And I even we had Congressman David Jolly on last week, the former congressman from Florida. And your name came up. I told him how excited I was to be having you on this week, and asked him if he got to work with you in his time there. And he said, no, I didn't get to work with him as much, but he said, but my textbook, my political science textbook in college, was written by him. And I said, well, see,
oh my goodness.
He literally wrote the book on how to be a congressman. I did an intro, and I told the story about 8th grade, and I talked about how I got into politics and started being really interested in it at that point, and how I consider my 8th grade year sort of the seminal moment when I thought, okay, I'm gonna really pay attention to the political world, and just was so interested in it, and how you were a part of that. And we talked about how, you've been in Congress longer than all but just a few people, just a handful of people who are there right now. And I want to talk some about like the changes that have, like how much different it is today than it was when you started. But that's such a broad question that I'm not going to throw that at you. How do you feel about the level of partisanship right now that you have to deal with in Congress, whether that be January 6th type discussions and the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff of the last few weeks, or just the general atmosphere of partisanship in Washington right now? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, the examples you mention are signs of the times. I don't know necessarily they're signs of partisanship. They're certainly not signs of a kind of mainstream partisanship. I would say the party leaders or at least the more responsible kind of mainstream party leaders of the Republican Party aren't crazy about Marjorie Taylor Greene and the kind of shtick she brings to the House. But it is true though that the parties are farther apart. They're more polarized. And I think especially in the Republican Party, there's been a real tug to the ideological extreme. There's some of that in both parties, but especially among Republicans. And so it has made things much, much harder. When I first came, I came in 1987, and the House was already becoming more organized around the two parties. We had strong party leadership. Jim Wright was a hard-charging speaker when I came in, and so it certainly wasn't all bipartisan. But there was a possibility in the committees, especially, of working together, working across party lines, coming to some kind of accommodation, and I really enjoyed that, and I found it a productive kind of atmosphere. Then my third term got on the committee. I think most people would say is the least partisan of all, appropriations, and that's still true. That's one reason I like it. We work on dollars and cents matters in a fairly common sense way. So there's still some vestiges of that more cooperative kind of relationship in the House, but appropriations often get swamped by partisan forces. We end up with these end of session crises, shutdowns or near shutdowns, and budget deals, and all that gets very hyper. And so, it's more partisan, more divided, and I think therefore less enjoyable, less productive place for many members. We've had to develop strong leadership to deal with this. You can't just let nature take its course in the House anymore. You got to have centralized, strong leadership. And of course, Newt Gingrich on the Republican side set the bar pretty high for that. But when Nancy Pelosi came in, she didn't go back to the old committee-centered model. She has been a strong leader as well, and I'd say she needs to be.
Do you do you get to work across the aisle much then outside of appropriations? Or, I mean, again, you've been in the fourth district for 20 some years now. You have a little bit more. I mean, I was joking to someone. The producer said, "Well, if he's too late, you'll just run against him." And I said, "There's no chance in hell because he's an institution in the Triangle. There's no one who could beat David Price now." But I said, "But you have that luxury of being able to have the seniority that you have, and do you get to do too much with the other side, or is it really a almost parliamentary whipped votes sort of scenario now?"
It's a good question because you're right to infer that it's not a complete transformation, and it isn't. We're not a parliament. We're not regimented to that degree, and there are differentiations within appropriations. As I said, is a relatively cooperative arena, although we sometimes get swamped by these end of session showdowns. I am the chairman. I'm the founder and the chairman of a totally nonpartisan group called the House Democracy Partnership, which I really value. That we've done this for 15 years now, and we have just a completely congenial bipartisan approach to working with parliaments in developing countries. This was started in the House by a guy named Martin Frost back when communism fell in Eastern Europe, and the House began helping these parliaments that had been just showcase parliaments under communism, help them get up and running and become European parliaments. The Polish parliament, the Czech, the Baltic parliaments, all of that was they flourished, I think, partly because they did get international support, especially from this country. Well, Gingrich let that die, and I thought that was a big mistake. So I brought it back with the help, though. It would have been impossible without the help of a Republican speaker, Dennis Hastert. And David Dreyer of California, Republican, and I co-led this for years, and now I'm once again the chairman. And we really do think it's important to send a signal of cooperation, but also to make it real in the way we work. So I must say it's one of the most enjoyable things I do.
Why do you think we don't hear about those things?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think we don't hear? What do you think the public doesn't hear so much about that? I mean, there obviously the news wants to fixate on things that are a little bit more juicy and controversial, but the general sense from the American public, I think, is that Congress is just a cesspit of people fighting and not getting anything productive done. Why do we not hear more about things like this or bipartisan solutions to the budget or immigration? Why do we not get to hear any of the good stuff?
Well,
if you're telling me there is.
The conflict is real, and the conflict is more severe, and so there's of course truth in that portrayal. But I'm saying it's not the whole picture, and it's a good question why we don't hear more about the other side. I think the press is drawn to conflict. You know, they love covering campaigns. They give a big yawn when it comes to covering the day-to-day work of the Congress. And so it's our job, of course, to make it more interesting and exciting and dramatic. We try in various ways to do that with
is it
mixed success.
Is that your job? I mean, there's multiple. What is the job of a Congress of a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, in your opinion? And I think I've known you and followed you long enough to know what I think your answer will be. But what really is the job of a congressman?
Well, a lot of people being asked that question might fall back on Sam Rayburn's old distinction between workhorses and show horses.
Well, I was going to say go right there and do it, but go ahead.
But and of course Sam Rayburn left no doubt he preferred the workhorses. But I don't want to get too high and mighty about that because there's something to being a show horse, or at least to knowing that you really do have to your good works don't speak for themselves. You really do have to reach out. You really do have to engage, and you have to think about how to make what you're doing engaging and exciting. That's fair enough. So I don't want to get totally absorbed in that messaging enterprise, but I also think that the graveyards are littered with members who thought they could just be just workhorses and think their good works would just be readily applauded, even if they didn't do anything to let people know.
Listen, I watch the news like it's some. I did cut it off during COVID last year because I just couldn't. My blood pressure medicine wasn't strong enough. But I do watch it a lot, and in the 20 plus years that you've been my representative, I don't think I've ever seen you on a national news program. And I tell people all the time, I sort of like that. I mean, there are some who, it seems, live in the rotunda of the Capitol where the cameras are, and some whose names are never heard. Marcy Kaptur and you come to mind as two who have been in Congress for a long time and have not necessarily sought praise or attention for it from a national audience. And I mean, I mean that as a compliment and a thank you as my representative. I appreciate that you're doing what you're doing versus running to the cameras. But how much good can a Congress member in 2021 actually do now if they don't take advantage of AOC's type of media exposure, if they're not doing in some ways what Eric Swalwell is doing or and being on camera a lot? Are there different strengths that workhorses have than show horses have, and vice versa?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I've been on some of those shows. I
didn't mean to say you've never done them. I'm just saying,
well,
you're not the most dangerous place in DC is between so and so and a camera, not between you and a camera.
No one would ever say that. No,
yes.
and I'm not the most exciting feature on the evening news. I'm aware that I have certain talents, and that's not one of them. But I do think the answer to your question is yes. I mean, there are different roles that people respect, and it may not be quite as simple as just workhorses and show horses, but there are different styles, there are different areas that we specialize in, and the place is still flexible enough, fluid enough where you can get some satisfaction doing something like initiating a body to work with the parliaments internationally, or in my case, I'm now on appropriations, and I get a lot of my satisfaction from boosting things that I believe in, within the housing and transportation areas. I mean, that really is obscure in terms of people's knowing about it. But when North Carolina gets a major grant that's going to let us sooner rather than later institute train service from Raleigh to Richmond and make this Southeast corridor. Really,
if my 12-year-old son could hear what you were talking about right now, he would run to DC on his feet and hug you. That's all he wants is for you to bring train service from Raleigh to Richmond and beyond.
Yeah, well, that's
what he wants.
Worth working on, and yes, that's one area where I can say I've scored a few points. But
do those who are on camera ever? I mean, I'm the last thing I want you to do is try to say something bad about anyone specifically. But do those who are on camera from either party do more to hurt the actual progress and work that either you or perhaps Speaker Pelosi is trying to push through by, I'm going to use a name. You don't have to, but I think about people like AOC or Rashida Tlaib or some of the very outspoken folks who focus on certain issues that may not be the priority for, the speaker at the moment. Do some of those show? I'm not going to use your word because you don't like it. But do some of those more vocal congressmen and women ever get in the way? And how do the party, how does the leadership kind of reel them in when necessary?
Well, some members, I'm not going to single out anybody either, but some members can very definitely get in the way. And when it's a matter of cultivating an external constituency, whether it's on social media or whatever, then, the premium is not on making a deal and compromising. The premium often is on being a kind of righteous aloofness from this fray, to say that you, no matter what, you're never going to compromise. You're never going to give in. That's just not a very good formula for legislative work. But let me just say that there are some people who I really admire who combine these gifts in very good ways. I mean, I think of, for example, Adam Schiff, who is, I've known Adam forever, and we've done a lot of work internationally with these parliaments. And Adam didn't start out as a media darling, but he certainly has become one. But he's very substantive. I mean, when you see Adam Schiff on one of these cable shows, it's going to be serious business. And I'd say the same about Chris Coons and Dick Durbin. I think there are members who are skilled, hardworking legislators who are also very, very good at the interpretive game, and so I think you can combine the two. It's but the problem is if you totally go one direction or the other, you got to pay attention to serious work around here, and you got to pay attention also to making sure somebody knows about it.
So on that note, and I'll keep Adam Schiff on the list here, but Speaker Pelosi, Steny Hoyer. Steny Hoyer is one of the only, I think there are only 6 who were elected to the House before you were. Steny Hoyer is one of those few. Steny Hoyer, Adam Schiff, Speaker Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, the leadership and
Actually,
the Democrat.
I've got a little seniority on Nancy about just a few months.
No, I'm saying
she was elected in a special election the same year I came. Yeah.
You got January '87. She came in, I think, June or July, right? Yeah.
Well, you've done some homework.
But,
yes.
Yeah,
right.
I did. I checked my math. Steny Hoyer came in a little bit before you did. Marcy Kaptur did, and I think. And then there's one, I think there's one other one that I can't remember the name of at the moment.
Marcy Kaptur has been here longer.
But
Steny, Steny's an old friend of Jim Hunt's. He's been here a good deal longer.
The leadership in the structure of the Democrat Party right now in the House is older.
That's a very kind way to put it. Yes.
I don't want you to go anywhere. I'm selfish. I want you to stay where you are. But who's the future of the Democrat Party? Because I mean, it's strange to look at the leadership and the Democrats in the House, and then look at the leadership of the Republicans in the House. They look like spring chickens over there on the Republican side compared to the Democrat side. So who's next? Are there people in the pipeline? Who do you think will be the future of the Democrat Party if, for some reason, Speaker Pelosi were to choose to not be Speaker in the next few terms?
Yes, I think so. And she's not going to be Speaker forever any more than I'm going to be around here forever. I think for the leadership, for those 3 leaders, all of which are 80 something, 80 or 81, those 3 leaders will not be there too many more years. And it could well be that Nancy has said she's going to step down next time. So it could well be there's a major changing of the guard after the 2022 elections. I wouldn't be surprised.
There must be some younger or newer
there's some really good
that you specifically like. I wouldn't ask you to single out people who you didn't like.
I'm happy.
But what about the ones you like?
Yeah, there was a generation of leaders I thought would be the next ones in line. That included Chris Van Hollen, Javier Becerra, who became Attorney General of California and now is I hope to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. Joe Crowley of New York, who AOC took out in a primary. Mm-hmm. That was the group coming on, and
ain't none of them available.
They're not around. So the question is who now? And I think you've got a good group. Well, Hakeem Jeffries, the head of the Democratic Caucus, is outstanding. There's a young Latino guy named Pete Aguilar from California. There is Hakeem is African American. There's good leadership, a very diverse kind of leadership, I think, coming along, and this is kind of the trial period. I think everybody knows that this group of 6 or 7 people in leadership right now, they're going to one of these days probably be running against each other, or at least people are going to be picking and choosing. But I feel really good about them. I'm glad we have Nancy right now, and Steny and Jim, because this has been a really trying time. The Trump period has been very, very difficult. I think Nancy says that if Hillary had won that election, she probably would have left, and I think that's true. I think a lot of us have the feeling that we kind of rose to the occasion, or needed to stick around to deal with Trump and what the Republican Party became under Trump. But that of course is mercifully now, I hope, behind us. And so, yes, I think you look for new leadership pretty quickly now.
But look at, the names that you gave, one's from New York, one's from California. What does the Democrat Party need to do to reach out more to those voters in the Midwest or the South who they lost? When you were there in the 90s, I can't think of who the Democrat leader was in the 90s when Newt Gingrich was the speaker, but on the Senate, Dick Gephardt.
You're right on target. It was Dick Gephardt from Missouri. You're right.
And Tom Daschle was from South Dakota, right, and the Senate side. The leadership and the faces of the Democrat Party have been increasingly Northeastern, Western, and very, very few from the Midwest and the South. And those also seem to be a lot of the states that Democrats continue to lose more and more. Or at least did in 2016. What do the Democrats need to do to kind of get back some of that working class, Midwest, blue collar, Southern voter base that Democrats had in the 90s?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. And of course, it isn't just personalities, although it's partly personalities. A good Midwestern leader, somebody who is in tune with the kind of folks you're talking about, I would say Senator Sherrod Brown is one such. I'd say Tim Ryan in the House is a very attractive guy and has a lot of that appeal.
He might be in the Senate
Kaptur.
Come 2 years from now.
Yeah, Marcy Kaptur she has working class roots and proudly says so, as does Debbie Dingell. We have good.
But you're also respectfully talking about Marcy Kaptur and Debbie Dingell, who Marcy Kaptur will likely be a part of this retiring class before too many more terms. Are there, besides Tim Ryan, are there young, energetic, vibrant, working class Midwest and Southern Democrats in the House right now?
Yes, there are. There's not as many as I would like, but there are some. I'll tell you another comer is Sherry Bustos. She's comes from Illinois and is very much. She wins in a red district. She had a tough time this time. She doesn't win hands down, but she's a college volleyball star and married to a law enforcement officer, and she's a good campaigner. She ran our campaign committee one cycle. So that's the example. That's an example of the sort of leaders I think we're looking for. But I take your point. I think the party has become too much centered in the East and West Coasts, and we've paid a price. We really have to put a better foot forward in the heartland.
Now I want to take a minute to tell you about an awesome and delicious service that's really perfect, especially for the times we're in right now. It's HelloFresh. And you've heard about HelloFresh probably, but you really need to take another look at HelloFresh and how great it is. With HelloFresh, you totally get fresh, pre-measured ingredients and incredible, blah, 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 incredible recipes. I do know how to speak. I don't know how to cook, though. And so HelloFresh is sort of perfect for me because you get all the ingredients and they're already measured. Like, that's always my biggest problem when it comes to cooking, knowing how to measure the right amount of all these ingredients and make sure it all gets in the right place. HelloFresh does all that work for you. And it also lets you skip the trips to the grocery store. And it's totally easy and it's fun and it's affordable. And it's actually now, I believe, America's #1 meal kit. It is the OG. It is the GOAT, the greatest of all time when it comes to meal kits. They have a whole bunch of recipes, dozens of recipes, and they've got a range of flavors. And it's not just different flavors, it's different cuisines and a whole bunch of ingredients. And you won't get bored. There's always something new to try every single week. You've always got a new recipe to do. And it's totally convenient. And it's never been healthier, never been easier. You can actually get low-cal meals. You can get carb-smart meals, vegetarian meals. Fish lover, I think that's pescatarian meal options. They've got those every week. So if you're a vegetarian, you're never going to have to just sit around and wait until they have a veggie option. They've got that every week. And no matter what you choose, every single one of them comes totally packed with fresh produce. It's sourced directly from farmers, and you can be flexible with it. You can customize the weeks you need it. You can add in extra proteins, extra sides, change up the serving size if you got guests coming over, if you want to do a dinner party and look like you are real fancy and know what you're doing, or you just want to double up on the favorite recipes because they're really good and you want extra helpings next time. You can make your box work for you every week, and you can easily change your delivery days or your food preferences. You can skip a week. I've done some of these meal delivery services. They screw you over because you got to subscribe and you can't skip weeks, and then you're going to be out of time. HelloFresh, you can skip weeks, and they're quick. They're healthy. It's 10, 20 minutes. You can feed your whole family in minutes. We're always pressed for time at my house. These meals are perfect when you're pressed for time. Go to HelloFresh.com/10HECK and use the code 10HECK for 10 meals. So it's HelloFresh.com/10HECK and use the code 10HECK, 10HECK for 10 free meals, 10 free meals, including free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/10HECK and use the code 10HECK for 10 free meals, including free shipping. It's America's #1 meal kit. One more time, go to HelloFresh.com/10HECK and use the code 10HECK. That's all one word for 10 free meals, including free shipping, or look for the link in our show notes. Y'all had a call that kind of got leaked right at the beginning of the year a little bit. I remember Abigail Spanberger having some choice quotes that came out of that caucus call about the differing opinions within the Democrat Party on how to win. The Cori Bush successes and the Jamal Bowman success versus how difficult it was for Abigail Spanberger or Connor Lamb to win their districts.
Right.
Where do you actually kind of have are in a little interesting scenario here in the Triangle, being that your district's pretty progressive, with Chapel Hill and parts of Raleigh. Where do you fall on that? Because again, you're in a place where you're safe and loved and you don't have much to worry about when it comes to reelection, but you're also one of the only members of Congress in the South, Democrats in the South right now, who, pieces of your district have over the years fallen into some of these more suburban areas. So the Abigail Spanberger versus Cori Bush argument, what do you think the Democrat Party needs to do to make sure that that it doesn't split just like the Republicans look like they're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mercifully, I don't think we do have anything like the split the Republicans have. But first of all, we got to respect both the Spanbergers and the Cori Bushes of the world and the kind of districts they represent. And we've got to have a big enough tent to include both of them. But most people, including me, are somewhere between those two. My situation has evolved. There's no question that I was a swing seat for a long time. I defeated a Republican incumbent, and then, as you well know, I was defeated by the Raleigh police chief in 1994 in the Gingrich sweep. Then I made a comeback, and I know what it's like to be in a Spamberger type seat. What changed that in North Carolina was nothing I did, honestly. It was what the legislature did in drawing these districts,
Right. Well, you ain't got to
particularly
tell
the
me
last
that.
10 years.
I was right there in it.
Yeah, well, yes, you were. You know what I'm talking about. But particularly the last 10 years, they just egregiously gerrymandered the state and created all these Republican districts, and so it was no favor to me. They just wanted to jam all the African Americans and all the Democrats they could find into a single district, and that happened to be my district. So that's good fortune for me, but it of course made for a very, very lopsided congressional delegation.
But if you didn't have the seniority and the name recognition and the respect that you have right now, don't you think you, in a district like the 4th, would end up having to potentially be running in a primary against someone who was far more progressive than perhaps the rest of the country is? Or, I mean, isn't that the problem, that a lot of people are now having to worry more about their primaries than their general elections?
Yes, absolutely. The answer is yes, and that too is true in both parties. But
can Congress do anything about that, or is that so constitutionally handled that Congress can't pass a law to restrict political gerrymandering?
I think we could pass a law tomorrow if we had the political will to do it. I certainly would vote for it. We have a comprehensive reform proposal that we call HR1 because we gave it primacy when we took leadership 2 years ago, and it includes nonpartisan redistricting commissions for every state, and that's I think that's an idea whose time has come. But
would it hold up to the courts?
Oh, I think so. Yes. I mean, look, how many states already have nonpartisan commissions? I mean, it's now around 15 or so. I mean, people are sick of this just egregious political gerrymandering, and North Carolina is a poster child for this. I don't know what it's going to take, but for the state to make the change. But if the state doesn't make the change, I'm all for the federal government making it for us. I just think it's gotten way out of hand. But what's happened, as of course my district has become solidly Democratic, so that the others are all more Republican. That's the idea. And then you're right. To the extent I would have a challenge, it probably would come from the left, within a Democratic primary.
This episode is sponsored by Apostrophe. Apostrophe's prescription skincare company for people that are ready to take their acne seriously. Now, again, this episode, we're talking a little bit about me in middle school. I actually lucked out in middle school. I didn't have that much acne, but I got to be honest with you, some of the people in my class were all covered in it. And I know people who are not just teenagers, but young adults who have acne. Apostrophe is the perfect company for you. Prescription acne treatment, I know because I've seen people use it. It absolutely works, but it's hard to get. You got to go take time off time off of work to go see a doctor. You got to go to the pharmacy, sit in line, all those medications. Then Apostrophe comes along, makes it totally easy. You can totally see a board-certified dermatologist right online. You get treated immediately with your medications delivered right to your door. You fill out an Apostrophe online questionnaire. You talk about your skin concerns, medical history, then you snap a few selfies, and the dermatologist gets right back to you with a customized treatment plan. It's incredibly easy. Everybody knows how to do selfies. This is really easy. The best part is that they've got the topical and oral medications. So you actually get to treat your acne from the inside out or the outside in. And they don't just do acne either. I know it's something that people are especially really focused on, but Apostrophe can cover a whole bunch of other stuff. They've got reducing redness, which I probably need, wrinkles, which I definitely need. They got dark spot treatment for dark spots. They really do everything that a dermatologist can do. You can do at Apostrophe. And it's nice to know that you had a real dermatologist, not just something that's a scam. These are real board certified dermatologists, and you're getting the real juice, the real good stuff. It's customized for exactly what you want to fix. And you don't have to schedule an appointment either. You actually just go on the app and bam, you get what you need right away. Their products feel great on your skin. They absorb real nicely. They got all the ingredients that you know are going to work. You can get $15 off your first visit with a board certified dermatologist at apostrophe.com/heck, or use our code HECK. Now, this code is only available to our listeners because nobody else would choose that code except for us. So get started. Just go to apostrophe.com/heck and begin your visit. Then you're going to use the code HECK at sign up and you'll get $15 off your dermatology visit. That's apostrophe.com/heck and use that code HECK to get your dermatology visit for $15 off. And we thank Apostrophe for sponsoring the podcast. This is gerrymandering, something we talked about with David Jolly last week. One of the other things we talked about was the amount of money in politics. And David Jolly talked about how when he was in Congress, in his first few weeks of Congress, he was told by Eric Cantor at the time that he had to raise $18,000 a week, I believe.
Oh,
maybe it was a day. It was a ridiculous amount. It was a ridiculous amount that he had to go across the street to the NRCC and make phone calls and do call time. How much has that changed since you got into Congress in the 80s? How much more emphasis is placed on raising money now than was before?
It's changed a good deal. It's much more of an emphasis. Again, I think the Republicans take it further than we do, but we got plenty of members too, especially those in the Spanberger territory. The ones who have these contested seats, who just have to raise money all the time, and it's.
But do you have to? I mean, do you have to do it for the party itself?
The reason I have to raise money, I don't raise nearly as much as members like that do, but I tend to raise $1 million or so per cycle. That takes some effort. And the reason I have to do that is I've occasionally had primaries, but usually it's to help in the general election and not to help myself so much as I help other people. I have hundreds of thousands of dollars that I'm obligated to pay to the National Campaign Committee. I make hefty contributions to the state Democratic Party, to the different political action committees that get out the vote in the counties. I mean, it's really the money goes pretty fast, but you do have to keep raising it, even if you have a reasonably safe seat.
But when you say obligated, I mean, is it who obligates? I mean, you got the seat. I voted for you. You got to be there. I mean, who do congressmen and women answer to, besides their constituents? I mean, who's telling these folks to raise money?
Well, I'm not subject to very much of that sort of overt pressure. Again, there are more tales on the Republican side than there are on our side about people who are being told their committee chairmanship might be in jeopardy if they don't, help the team, that sort of thing. A lot of that.
Have you never wanted to be a chairman?
Did I not want to be a chairman
of a committee outside of a subcommittee? Have you been a chairman of a committee?
No, I'm chairman of this commission, this parliamentary commission, and I'm chairman of an appropriations subcommittee, which I think most people would say is worth more than most chairmanships, simply because we have the power of the purse. So,
we've got an EPA. We got an EPA facility here. Thank you.
We did.
So I understand it's good, it's important, but I noticed that
being chairman. Nobody's ever made me think my chairmanship depended on raising money. So the short answer is no. But if the question, do I feel some obligation to the team, and do I read the the scorecards that come out occasionally that tell how much each of us is helping. Yeah, sure, I look at those things, and I feel some peer pressure to do my part.
If you were writing your textbook, if you were writing David Jolly's textbook, or if you were still teaching regularly at Duke, what would be different about your textbook? What would you edit today that is completely...
Well, actually, that's a good question, because I just got the 4th edition of that book out.
Oh, did you?
And
how much did you have to change?
I had to change a lot. Much more than any other previous edition. It's partly that 15 years have passed, but it's also that the institution has changed. And in what you've said, you've anticipated a lot of what I'm having to deal with. The institution is far more polarized, far more hyper-partisan, far more ideological, in the sense of having members who, Marjorie Taylor Greene is an extreme example, but she's not the only example of people who are just kind of out there on their own wavelength. It makes it hard. Makes it hard to put coalitions together, cooperative efforts together. And then it's more centralized, partly because it's more conflictful and more difficult. Then you got to have stronger leadership to get things done. And then you add to that all these crises we're dealing with. I mean, the pandemic, of course, is in a class to itself, but it's not the only crisis. I mean, we've had government shutdowns. We've had one kind of budget implosion or another for years, man-made crises that then guess who has to come in and pick up the pieces? It's the leader, the dear leader, the speaker or the president. You centralize power when you're operating under duress. And so that's what I write about in the book, about how that has changed. What I call the march towards centralization has continued, and some of the reasons for it. And some of the, I say there, I mean, look, I can put a D on my shirt and be a proud partisan when I need to be. Sometimes that's important. But I do look kind of wistfully at the days when we marked up bills in committees into the night, and we put the other bipartisan groups to do amendments, and we were really legislating. And so much of that now doesn't happen. So much of the work we do is leadership driven.
But you still enjoy it.
I still enjoy it, and I still find enough, despite changes that I don't want to sound like an old fogey. Despite changes that aren't entirely agreeable, it still is a wonderful institution, worth defending, worth improving, worth reforming. But basically, I think the new brand of politician who operates on social media and who kind of uses the Congress as a platform, that's not what the country depends on. People who believe in our democratic institutions and who make them work. And that is a lot of what I write about in the book. We cannot lose that, and that's one reason the invasion of January 6th was so offensive. Just the utter disdain for institutions that have been around for over 2 centuries and that represent a democratic experiment that I guess all of us understand now it could be lost. It's not self-executing.
Well, I want to use that to segue into our questions from listeners, because we ask listeners to send in questions every week. They know who the guest's going to be, and they can send in questions in advance. You can do that if you're listening on Twitter or Instagram at politicon.com, or you can email to podcasts@politicon.com. And we have quite a few really good ones, I thought, for you this week. Trish from DC asks, "This fencing is really starting to get me down. When can our Capitol open up again?"
Boy, don't I want to know that too. I drove up from North Carolina today, and I live within the perimeter. I live in an apartment building across from the Supreme Court, and getting to my place is an ordeal. And the fencing, it's unsightly, and it's a sign of the times, I realize. But we need some good security measures that are less intrusive, and I think
Is that
I think we'll
something
get
that's being worked out? I mean, is that something that people
it.
can?
Absolutely is being worked on, and I think people of all party stripes, partisan stripes, don't want this place to be a fortress.
I mean, when
Uh,
Pennsylvania Avenue closed,
no,
it
oh,
it only
yeah,
closed more. As this is something that you believe, though, unlike the closure of Pennsylvania Avenue, this is something that won't remain permanent.
I don't believe so. I'm not. I'm not sure what will change, but I think we will see the day when certainly we can go on Constitution and Independence Avenue again, and I hope that we have a reasonably open campus. There will be security checkpoints and whatever we need, but there's a huge symbolism, isn't there? Don't you? There's in the open campus here,
I mean,
the kind of
the People's House, right?
the people's house, yeah, where people can come and make their views known, and I'm certainly wanting to preserve that.
Okay. Alicia from LA asks, does infrastructure or stimulus have a better chance of bipartisanship?
Oh, that's a good question, and it's important to know the difference. By stimulus, I think that she means the
I'm
what we're
assuming
doing right,
COVID. Right.
the
Right.
COVID relief bill,
Mhm.
and that's uh, that's not getting the bipartisan support that one would hope that it would. Back in the CARES Act and the other things we enacted last year, some got bipartisan support. Although even then, Mitch McConnell sat on this for a long time. It was not easy. But now with Democrats in charge, it remains to be seen how much Republicans will feel like they want to cooperate. So this is this is something that we're passing on a basis that gets around the Senate filibuster. When you hear people talk about doing reconciliation, that's what it means. It's a way of packaging the measure to get around the filibuster so that 50 plus one can pass it in the Senate. And that's probably prudent. It's probably what we need to do, unless you want to mess around with this for months and still not get many Republican votes. So it's disappointing. But there will be some Republican votes for this, I think, in the end. And then comes the other piece, the infrastructure. And here, too, there's been a lot of bipartisan talk. And everybody around here says they're for infrastructure. And so I'm chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee that funds infrastructure. So I'm going to be a part of this.
You got to get my son his train, right?
I want to do it as cooperatively as possible. I'll just put it that way. But there again, I don't know. The economists, even some very conservative economists, tell us that this is a time to invest. This is a time to bring the economy back and to make some investments. Interest rates are low. We borrow now, but we will deal with some of these budget issues later. But this isn't the time. The danger, Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, says is not going too large. The danger is going too small. So I feel that way about an infrastructure bill. It's been a long time coming, but there too, I think the chances of full bipartisan cooperation are not great. The chances of some bipartisan cooperation, I think we can manage.
Okay. I've got a few more I want to get to, so we'll do quick fire on some of these. Natalia from Detroit asks, are we focusing so much on taking revenge on Trump that we're ignoring the American people?
No. It's a legitimate worry, but I don't think we had any choice but to hold him accountable for for what he instigated and for the big lie that led up to this. That where he, for the first time in American history, really wanted to stay in power despite a free and fair election. That didn't want to transfer power and wanted a mob to storm the Capitol to halt the electoral count. I mean, just think about that. That's really over the line in terms of basic democratic practice. So I think we had to hold him accountable. I think a lot of Republicans, like Liz Cheney, I think was a stand-up person on this. They recognized this. That doesn't mean we don't we can do a number of things at the same time, and I hope we're demonstrating it this week, because this very week we're going to pass the relief bill, and we'll go on from there. So, I don't want to dwell on Donald Trump any more than we have to, but I do think the impeachment was fully warranted, just because of the egregiousness of the offense and the precedent we would have set if we let it go.
Okay, Shauna from Chapel Hill. So be careful how you answer this one.
All right, my constituent.
So says, you've helped with student loans before. Should they be forgiven?
I'd like to see some forgiveness, but I don't think they can be completely forgiven, and I don't think the forgiveness past a certain point should take no regard of income levels. Borrowing funds under reasonable terms, and we ought to make sure the terms are reasonable. But borrowing under reasonable terms is a legitimate way to pay for your education. It's an investment that will bear returns, and loans are made and loans are paid back, hopefully with some flexibility with regarding people's circumstances. So I don't think you, regardless of people's circumstances or income levels, I don't think you just have a blanket forgiveness. On the other hand, there are a lot of people laboring under a lot of student debt out there. So, I would think some forgiveness would be good. I think that forgiveness should be focused on the lower income levels, and I also think that going forward, we need to make sure the terms of those loans are favorable, and also that people can refinance the loans, just like you can do a house loan. Why wouldn't you be able to do that? So there's some things about student loans that still need to be made more consumer friendly.
Shauna, if you're listening, which I assume you are, since you sent in a question, if you were hoping for, yes, they should all be forgiven, remember, you got an honest answer and not some bullshit. He answered the question honestly. So I give mad major props for that. Last question. Brittany from Charleston, South Carolina asks, despite our reputation, is the South the country's future?
Oh, my. Well, what should I say? Maybe
just say yes. We're biased, right?
I think the right answer is yes, right?
She lives in Charleston. She ain't voting for us.
Listen, I don't think any of us should think our region probably is the whole ball of wax. But I love the South, and I especially love the New South. And I came from a small town in East Tennessee that was really not very southern. This was Union territory during the Civil War over there in East Tennessee, and then I came into the more typical South, and it's been a political battle ever since, with the forces that are contending for Southern allegiance. And I think our region has produced its share of reactionaries and racists, and I mean, we know the history, but we also know that it's hard to beat the South for people who want to make things better. And the reform politics of the South is what formed me. The civil rights movement and the desire to put the negative past behind, and to broaden opportunity and all the rest. I mean, that's what our politics needs to be about. So in that sense, yes, I'd love to see the South lead the way.
Well, listen, I will speak up on behalf of us by saying the South, for all this, it says, despite our reputation, Brittany asks, I want to remind people that the South also gave us people like Terry Sanford, who I've said many times is a political hero of mine also, who was one of the leaders of the New South that you're talking about right there. It also gave us people like Jim Hunt, and North Carolina voted for Barack Obama in 2008. There are a lot of things about the South that I think get forgotten about in an effort to put everything on a quick bumper sticker and to forget some of the as you said, Congressman, there are quite a few things that we need to reckon with in the South. with our history, but there are other things that I think we have to be incredibly proud of.
Yeah, and don't forget the South produced John Lewis, the South produced Martin Luther King, and the South produced now a couple of generations of Black leadership that has led the nation and has been forged in the struggles of the South. So we have a very complicated history, but I think there's a lot to learn from it and a lot to gain from it.
Well, I will say one last thing here, that the South also produced David Price, and I'm not being hyperbolic to say that you have, from my 8th grade year through the support you gave me when I ran for Congress in 2014, on through till now, been an incredible example to me of what a politician should do. And you probably don't remember this story, but the year I ran for Congress, we both were at a Valentine's Day event for it was either the state party or the Wake County party.
Yeah, Wake County in Raleigh.
Okay, the Wake County party. We were both at that, and we were standing next to each other. And I honestly can't remember who it was that was sort of hamming up the room in the middle. It was a state candidate of some kind. It wasn't Roy Cooper, but it wasn't you and it wasn't me. It was somebody else. And I wish I could remember. But you said something to me, sort of to me and sort of aside. And you said that the best politicians think that politicians think that they are the most important person in the room, and that public servants believe they are the least important person in the room, and to strive to be a public servant. And I have remembered that. You do, you don't remember that?
I don't remember it, but it's a great sentiment. I hope I did say it.
You did, trust me. It was, and I gotta say, and you don't even have to respond, but to those people who are listening, I cannot think of another person other than maybe Joe Biden, honestly, who is so willing to show up for people who you represent. I remember walking in parades with you in Fayetteville, where you would be half a mile behind where everybody else was, because you were shaking every single person's hand on the side of the road. And I remember, I'm not going to BS here, I'm just going to be honest. I was running for Congress. You were running for Congress for re-election, but I couldn't help but think, damn, he has no chance of losing in this gerrymandered blue district. No chance of losing in that general election. And you still were out there meeting everyone, talking to everyone. Your wife, Lisa, has been incredibly supportive of you for all the years you've been doing this. But if there are people who are listening who think about Washington and think about it being some sort of swamp, I can tell you personally that there are people in Congress right now, like the man who you've listened to tonight, Congressman Price, who actually are going to work every day to actually get things done. And I have to tell you that I cannot thank you enough for setting that example for me as a young man growing up, and as an adult watching watching your career and how you've served this district. And I can't thank you enough for setting that example for me and for so many others. You're not constantly out on TV, on camera, but you're actually getting crap done for North Carolina and for the country. And if more people went to Congress with your mindset to make progress, I think we'd be in a much better place. And I cannot thank you enough for being here with us this week to talk about what you love to do and have done so well. So thank you so much, Congressman.
Oh, thank you. That's something to live up to. That's the way I'll take your words.
Well, you've already done it, but keep it up.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the chance to to connect with what's obviously a nationwide audience here. And so you're very kind to have me on the first anniversary. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Next week, if you're listening, Adam Gentleson, who was former chief of staff to Senator Harry Reid, Majority Leader Harry Reid, he'll be with us next week as we get back to talking about how the heck people in Congress can get along. But I'll ask you to close us out, Congressman Price. How the heck are we going to get along?
Well, I guess remember who sent us and what our charge is, and kind of keep our eye on that. There's some we have a saying, cooperate where you can, fight where you must. But of course the gift is to know the difference, to know when to operate in a cooperative, accommodating fashion, and when to just dig in your heels and say no. It just has got to be. We got to do better. And so politics is a constant challenge for citizens and elected officials alike. And so let's just hope, as we have these kinds of discussions, that we get we rekindle our determination, but also gain a little wisdom as well. So thank you, Clay. This is a great hour.
Thank you very much, Congressman. We'll see y'all next week.